Assalamu alaikum. Masal al-khair. Thank you so much for the introduction, and thank you so much for inviting me here. I'm excited to be here, and I am excited to be part of a conversation at a moment that is strange. 70 years after the Nakba, 70 years after Palestinian land was stolen, 70 years after people were dislocated, pushed from their homes, killed, 70 years after the international community watched vulnerable Palestinians have their lives taken, we remain committed to resistance. I am not Palestinian. I am not Arab. But I am your comrade, I am your brother in struggle. And I am honored to stand with you this evening as we talk and not just remember that great catastrophe in 1948, but we remain committed to fighting until every Palestinian is home again. People often ask me why I would be concerned with Palestinian lives, why I would be concerned with the liberation of Palestine. And when I say Palestine, I mean all of historic Palestine, from river to sea. And I got lots of answers, you know, and as a black person, in particular in America, they're like, you got enough to worry about, you know. It ain't like y'all got it good over here. You know, you could just be worried about black stuff. You don't have to then throw this Palestinian thing on you. But my answer is quite clear and quite simple for me. One, the Palestinian struggle is the righteous struggle. Everything else aside, I don't need to be Palestinian to appreciate justice. One needn't be Muslim to appreciate justice. I'd like to believe that the best of the Christian tradition is about love and fairness and justice. I'd like to believe that the best of the prophetic Jewish tradition is about love and mercy and justice. And therefore, as someone who covets and loves justice, there is no way that we can live in a world where Palestinians are separated, where Palestinians are dislocated, where Palestinians are rendered second-class citizens in their very own lands, while immigrants, foreigners, and invaders are able to come into a land, uproot the people, and stay there. That is simply unjust. And so for me, as a person who believes in justice, I have to believe in this struggle. But I'm not smart all the time. But any amount of intelligence I have lets me know that we can never have justice for anyone unless we have justice for everyone. So as I think about the Palestinian struggle, I recognize that we can't have liberation anywhere until Palestinians are free. As long as Palestinians are refugees in their own land, as long as Palestinians are everywhere from Syria to Lebanon, to Jordan, to the United States, as long as there's an apartheid system, then there can never be global justice. As long as the United States continues to dump money into the Israeli military, into Israeli soldiers, into Israeli roads that are used to divide Palestinians, as long as our money goes into checkpoints, we'll never have justice. I also feel as an American that I have a responsibility to support Palestinian resistance. Because as an American, it is our tax dollars that allow this to happen. So I'm not doing a wonderful deed. I'm not doing you any favors. Don't pat me on the back for coming here and supporting Palestinian resistance. No, my presence here is my duty as an American citizen, because every time I pay taxes, every time I put a dollar out, every time I write a check, I'm supporting the occupation of Palestine. Every American who writes a check for their taxes is supporting the ritual humiliation of Palestinian children. Every time we write a check, we're supporting an Iron Dome that is used to to justify the disproportionate force of Israel into Gaza. Every time we write a check, we are used to support a system that enables innocent Palestinians, peaceful protesters, journalists, children, teachers, mothers, daughters to be killed when they protest the ugly occupation of Palestine, when they attempt a return to land march, when they stand up for freedom and justice. That's our responsibility as Americans. We owe you that. All of us owe you that. I also believe that I must support Palestine and that we must support the liberation of Palestinian people because I saw it with my own eyes. I've been to Palestine many, many times now, and the first time I arrived in Tel Aviv, Ben Gurion Airport, you know, as a black person, I'm used to being the person that gets stopped all the time. It's sort of what we do, you know, you black, you get stopped. And for the first time, as I walked through Ben Gurion, they told me to go. And I watched South Asian brothers and sisters stopped. I watched people who they thought might be Palestinians stopped. I watched everyone being stopped who they believed could be Arab or Muslim. And it was the first time that I could, from the outside looking in, understand what it means to see the kind of ritual state violence and state surveillance the Palestinians have to go through every single day. I then tried to get a cab from Ben Gurion, and I said, I want to go to Ramallah. They said, you can't. Not from here, not with a Palestinian driver. It was the first time that I recognized what a system looked like, where everyone didn't have the same access, everyone didn't have freedom of movement, everyone couldn't do what they wanted. I got to travel to Quds and see Afro-Palestinian brothers and sisters behind Masjid al-Aqsa. And I said, oh my God, there's a whole community of Palestinians we don't even get to see. And the world opened up for me. I remember going to Khalil and watching settlers pour urine and bleach on the heads of Palestinian children. And we cried as we looked at land that was formerly Palestinian taken. I went to Akka and I saw a brother. It's the first time I'd ever seen anyone with a key around their neck. And when he told me that his family originally wasn't from Akka, but they were relocated, and that the key symbolized the desire to return home and a commitment to returning home, we cried again. It was by seeing up close what it means for two people to commit the same crime, and a Palestinian being put in a military court and an Israeli being put in a normal civil or criminal court, one being allowed to see a judge within 24 hours and another being held for 5 days. I'm not telling you anything you don't know, but watching all of that for me stirred something in me. And it made me want to tell this story. And when I came back home, I tried to tell the story. But the problem was that the American media was committed to telling a different story. The American media was not interested in telling a story of Palestinian freedom or Palestinian resistance or the occupation of Palestine as perpetrated by the Israeli government. The American media kept trying to tell a story of Israeli self-defense. They'd had me debate Alan Dershowitz. That was a full-time job not to jump through that, across that table. So part of our job, part of my job as a journalist now is to tell the story. And not just to tell the story myself, but to create the space so that Palestinians can tell their own story. Because too often Palestinians are not represented by Palestinians on television. Too often Palestinians aren't allowed to tell their story in the newspaper. Too often they get one white guy to speak for Palestinians. If you get lucky, you get a brown person to tell the story of Palestinians. But in the future, Palestinians must be able to tell their own story. That means we need more Dina Takrouris. We need more Rula Jibrils. We need more Palestinians who can stand up and tell their own narrative, because you all have a wonderful and powerful and compelling narrative to tell. I'm not going to talk long, but I do want to say one more thing. As we think about the journey from 1948 to 2018, as we think about every moment of resistance, no matter how dark this moment is, I remain inspired. I remain inspired by this idea of Samud. I remain inspired by this idea of steadfastness. From day one, Palestinians have been committed to freedom and liberation, never been afraid. And so no matter how dark this Trump moment is, and the Trump moment is dark, the Obama moment was dark. I mean, Obama's biggest act of courage was remaining neutral on a UN vote that everyone else in the world understood was wrong. But now it's moved from Obama, who was afraid to defend Palestine, to Trump, who is committed to expanding the occupation and committed to the erasure of Palestinian lives altogether. We must remain steadfast and committed, but we must remain together. That means that Palestinian struggle must be linked to black struggle. Black struggle must lead to Latin American struggle. Latin American struggle must lead to Asian American struggle. We must see ourselves as one. And history teaches us that when we are committed and when we are organized, we can win. Martin Luther King used to say in the United States, when dogs bite us in Birmingham, we bleed everywhere. Well, dogs are biting us in Birmingham right now. Dogs are biting us in D.C. right now. Dogs are biting us in New York right now. And when we stood on the ground in Ferguson, when Michael Brown was killed by the police, I saw Palestinian people out there. And when Gaza was attacked in 2014, I saw black people out there. When I stood in the West Bank, there were black people out there screaming, Philistine Huda, and there were Arabs screaming Black Lives Matter. There is a connection between us that has always existed. Malcolm X stood up and said that the occupation was wrong in 1964, even before the next set. The Black Panthers stood up and said this is wrong. The Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee said that Israel is wrong, that Zionism is an evil. We can connect. We can support one another. We can believe in one another. We can resist together. Let us continue to fight the occupation of Palestine. Let us continue to organize. Let us continue to build. Let us continue to fight. Let us continue to dream and believe that we can come home again, that violence can be defeated, excuse me. Although violence can defeat too. And finally, let us support every organization that is trying to help us resist. Let us continue to build, let us continue to teach, let us continue to dream. At a moment where Jerusalem is under attack, at a moment where the very capital is under siege, at a moment where international law is being ignored, at a moment where violence is the order of the day. Let us retain our dignity, let us retain our strength, let us retain our courage, and let us be certain that we can come home again, that you can come home again, that you will all be free, and that Palestine will once again be returned to its rightful owners. Thank you. God bless you. Assalamu alaikum.